Money Majors, Episode 10. Welcome to Money Majors, your podcast by young entrepreneurs for young entrepreneurs. I'm Jonathan Posey.
And I'm Garrett McNamara.
And welcome to your weekly Money Majors news rundown. So, how you doing, Garrett?
Pretty good. School just started back up. I'm busy with work, and I've been spending a lot more time on a couple startup ideas of my own. So those have been eating up nights and weekends.
Yep, I hear that. I've got school myself, got some very interesting classes that I'm engaged in and having a lot of fun. But yeah, it certainly does take up a lot of time. So shall we jump into the news first?
Definitely.
Okay, first up on the news is a fellow named Graham LaPala. It's an article entitled Milton High Graduate Makes Mark Finding Cars. And this article comes out of an organization called Progress Partners, which is an initiative in the Greater North Fulton County Chamber of Commerce, just north of Atlanta. Graham LaPala is a big-time car nut. It's been his passion for a very long time, since he was a little kid. And when he got to Georgia, he started a little business where he actually helps people find cars, both new and used. He's only 22 years old, and his buying service fee starts at about $600 for a vehicle under 50 grand, and it goes up from there. But he goes out, he finds the car, negotiates the price, makes the sale, get the inspections taken care of, and he delivers the car to your door.
Yeah, I think that's definitely worth the $600.
Yeah, he's got a lot of very good clients already so far. Has a healthy client roster. Former Chicago Cubs outfielder C.J. Stewart, who lives in Atlanta, is one of his clients. He has other business executives who've bought multiple cars from him, come back for their kids, and he just took a love, a hobby, and ran with it and made it into a very interesting business.
Yeah. He says next to buying a house, buying a car is typically the second largest purchase that a person makes. So it is an important thing.
Yeah, so very, very, very interesting idea that he has there. So moving along, we've got an interesting article from the New York Daily News, which is entitled Young Socially Conscious Entrepreneurs Measure Success by Giving Back. The article is about a book that was just recently released by James Marshall Riley, who's only 29 years old, and it's called Shake the World. And his book examines the idea that a growing number of young, wealthy, socially conscious entrepreneurs who kind of came of age, I guess, in the era of avarice, have been measuring their own success based on how much they're giving back to the community. For example, he wrote this book, and he goes out and he examines a lot of entrepreneurs who've done this. For example, Adam Braun, who was backpacking across India as a college student, he asked a child who was begging on the street what the child wanted most. And the child said, a pencil. Now, for a lot of us, that would be, oh, you want a pencil? Here's a pencil. Now, Braun took that much further. He created a nonprofit, which he actually kind of relabeled to call it a for-purpose. And it's called Pencils for Promise, which has built about 40 schools and hopes to begin 60 more by year's end in places like Guatemala, Nicaragua, Laos. Blake McCoskey, who met kids who didn't own shoes and needed to attend school in Argentina, and so he created one of your favorite companies, Tom's Shoes, where for every purchase the company gives a pair of shoes to a shoeless child. So he went around, just interviewed all these really interesting people who are young, who say, okay, I've got a lot of money now and I've achieved some level of success. Rather than just earning more money and saying that's my passion or that's how I verify myself as being successful, they spin it around and give back to other people. So I thought that was a really interesting program. Riley, as he said, he graduated from just an unremarkable upstate college as an English major, pinched pennies for years and years, touring with a band. Actually, he opened for a few famous bands, but played in a rock band, got out of the rock band, started his own little music management company, kind of booking some of the talent that he met touring, and soon just kind of ratcheted that up and went off to work for other promotion, advertising, and marketing companies, where he managed Nobel and Pulitzer Prize winners for existing agencies, negotiating their speaking contract, which, as we know, can get pretty high. So essentially, he's a young, rich, single guy, but he still had that place in his soul where he wanted to do something. So he reached out to Penguin, book publisher, told him his idea for a book, and he says, well, I mean, I'm an English major. I can write a book. He'd never written a book before, but he figured he could do it. So he quit his job and just started traveling across America, interviewing this new wave of socially responsible young entrepreneurs. So very, very interesting idea. And we've spoken before in the past about young people looking at corporations and looking at their jobs and being critical of those jobs and ways of finding how those jobs give back.
Right, and we're going to see that in another article later on in this podcast.
Yeah, and
where people are choosing their positions and everything based on social impact.
Yes, we talked once, maybe a little critically, about an article in the Washington Post, a commentary, that was saying that the young people of today are making that a very big part of their job searches. Yes, I definitely want a socially responsible company. And I think we were a little critical, saying, when you're being interviewed, of course you'd say that. It's maybe a misleading question. But this article kind of takes it a little bit further, saying it's not someone entering the job market, but someone who's been out there, who's been successful, and now they want to take some of that knowledge they've learned and give back. So I like that idea.
Great. Well, next up is an article entitled, "At Davos World Economic Forum, Millennials Help Add Diversity to a Stale Old Crowd." I thought this was a pretty pointed article, pretty interesting.
Davos.
But, yeah, on Wednesday, the World Economic Forum began its annual meeting in Switzerland. It's commonly just called Davos to those in the know. And the convention has been a topic of intense debate since its founding in 1971. Those who support it believe it's an opportunity for global leaders to come together and transform society. Conversely, detractors view it as a place for the world's elite to hobnob and celebrate their riches. So we got two different views of what the purpose of this convention is. And while, in the opinion of the article, the occurrence falls somewhere in between, both public opinion and the current economic climate indicates that Davos should do something more to transform its image. So they started including millennials in its new Global Shapers program, and it's trying to counter the misconception that only the aging wealthy generations have a voice there. So Davos originally began as a place for European businessmen to stay current on U.S. business practices. Over time, the invitation list has expanded to politicians, scientists, and artists. And in fact, the panels were once limited to economics, and they've broadened to include topics such as social and environmental issues. It's true that many business leaders attend only for networking with other CEOs and everything else, but important political events have happened there as well, so on and so forth. So they're trying to change up their image from being this old club to something that's newer, more reactive and everything else.
Yeah, I've always seen in the news for several years Davos, and it was always portrayed as this ultra elite place where, folks like Bono, Bill Gates, Bill Clinton all show up and talk about solving the world's problems and solving the economics of the problems. And this was the first time I'd ever heard of saying, let's improve our image by including, not quite as mega wealthy people. So hopefully maybe that works out for them, and you and I will get to go to Davos someday. That would be wonderful.
We can hope.
We can hope. We have hope.
Next up is an infographic for the, and we'll link to it, but the top 10 biggest young entrepreneur movers of 2011 from Under 30 CEO. And it's a look back on 2011 and looking forward into the same group of people and their potential in 2012. Top on the list is the co-founder of 99 Designs, which we've talked about before. That's a place where you go to get a lot of different design versions for your new company or something. You pay a small fee, you get a lot of different designs to choose through, and they get voted on as well. And you can share. I've participated in this where a business founder will share the collection of designs and have you vote on them, and the most popular wins.
Yeah, we see that with T-shirts.
Yes.
We were just talking about it before the show. We were going through a rundown about T-shirts and voting and things like that.
Yeah.
I was when I looked through this list. Of course, I've heard of 99 Designs. Second on the list is Dropbox. Third is Instagram. But then you get to some of these other companies, and I haven't heard of them, which is strange considering as much that I consume. I thought I've at least come across a few of these. But they all look really, really interesting. Companies like OnSwipe, Grasshopper Group, Freshie, Solbean, Solbin. Uh, a lot of very interesting companies. You can go through and look at this wonderful infographic, which talks about how many employees they have, how much their projected revenue is, the kind of funding that it took to start up the company. So we'll have to go through that and see if there's some of these companies we could bring in and interview them.
Yeah, one interesting one was Ad Parlor. They're about the middle of the list. And infographic says that they're one of less than 100 companies that have access to the Facebook ad API. So I guess
what is an API? Explain that.
Application Programming Interface. It's what you interact with a web service. For instance, Facebook has open authentication. You'll see this on sites where it's like you could log in to the site or you could log in with Facebook. And in that case, if you log in with Facebook, the site itself is not storing your login credentials, but instead it relies on a third party for authentication. An API is how you interact. Like if you have TweetDeck, the application, it interacts with Twitter's API to post things, to read things, to get messages. But yeah, it's what you use or your service uses to interact with another service.
Okay,
so it's like the public front door.
It's like it's like Facebook is a building, and you're allowed to put a door that goes into Facebook. So it's a way of like you could have an app, and you could log into the app, and the app will take whatever you do, log into Facebook for you, and send that information out to Facebook. So they're
post for you or read for you or whatever it is.
Okay,
yeah.
so it's allowed to have that path in. That's a pretty big deal, I would say. There's only 100.
Yeah, actually, I want to look into what it takes to be one of these companies. It seems really restrictive. I don't know what you got to do. You probably got to prove legitimacy. Facebook's probably trying to reduce the number of like virus-laden ads that are served through there. I've seen that happen with big news sites where they have untrusted content networks for advertising. So Facebook may be just as really restricted. They may have high quality standards. Who knows? But yeah, Ad Parlor's on there.
This idea actually, there's an interesting fact I'll make on this is that in Twitter, when Twitter first came out, a lot of young people were creating applications specifically for the iPhone and Android telephone systems that would allow you to do things on Twitter a little more fluidly or give a different look to sending out your tweets. And Twitter didn't like that. Twitter actually shut them down. They cut off access to the API. And that made a little bit of a splash on the news because you had a lot of young entrepreneurial upstarts that were banking on Twitter, and then they were suddenly cut off from having access to Twitter. So there's always a link somewhere with all of these things.
And at the end of this infographic is a map of the U.S. and where these companies are based. 4 of them are based out of San Fran in California. 1 is in Chicago. The rest are more northeast in like New York or Massachusetts. There's 1 in Toronto, Canada, and 1 in Monterrey, Mexico. So it's either East Coast or West Coast. 1 in Canada, 1 in Mexico.
Location based a little bit.
So
what's next?
Let us see here. We've got 7 ways to overcome age and be respected as a young entrepreneur. And this was kind of a general article. To me, it seemed pretty straightforward and common sense, but
it's a problem we both suffer from.
Yeah, yes and no. Being young can detract from your perceived credibility and everything else. But being young is also now we're seeing being treated as kind of a gift. Like, look at a young person, they consider companies will be like, oh, they know what to do with social media because they grew up with it, they're internet savvy, or they've got a new way to look at it. So whatever the young person says is what that generation says. And if they're trying to, that company's trying to nail that market segment, then they're going to point to the young person and be like, what do you say about this? So, but the 7 ways. These are pretty much, it starts off with a list of challenges that you can expect if you're a young entrepreneur. The very first is what we talked about, which is the challenge of credibility. This individual had a marketing business, and he talks about that a little bit in the article, but as a young entrepreneur, you're faced with convincing clients, customers, and even prospective employees that you are serious enough and capable of delivering on your promises. Building credibility will determine how far you go as an entrepreneur. So he didn't offer solutions or anything to that, but he says be aware of this. You can't just walk in and have everyone trust you. You can't assume that that's going to happen.
Well, I think I've met some very, very, very smart young people. And by young, I'm talking between the ages of 18 and 21. And they know exactly what they want to say, but a lot of times they look like they're 16 and they act really young and they sound really young. And you have someone who's, I'll give you an example. A friend of mine, when I first met him, he was 19. He's now about 25. He is about 5 feet 6, rail thin. He has kind of long, shaggy hair, but he speaks 6 languages. He has bought, flipped, and sold over a dozen houses in the D.C. area. He's worked for some very major corporations doing consulting work, and now he's back at Mason getting a master's degree in information technology. Very, very, very smart guy. But being that he's only 5 feet 6, rail thin with a long shaggy hair, he says he's told me that when he talks to people a lot of times, unless they're C-level type people, meaning CEOs, CFOs, and things who have that more maturity on their side and can listen and pick out that this person knows what they're talking about. If it's lesser people saying, for example, hiring managers, they tend to get this, as he says, they get this look on their face where their eyes kind of glaze over and they just kind of dismiss him. And his theory is that they're dismissing him not so much for what he's saying, but because they see him as very much as a kid. So he went through a lot of work to try to improve his image and make himself look older, act older, sound older. Like, for example, just talking slower, being more deliberate in his interactions with people. So looking at can be a detriment, and there are ways around that. But I'm sorry to interrupt, but continue. There's other things in this wonderful article about this.
No, but in his case, he can let his resume lead him.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. Like, just let it speak for itself.
Which you can do sometimes, but it's when people see you come in the door.
Don't take you seriously initially.
Yeah.
But I think you can overcome that. I've overcome that just talking to some people where I've been an intern or something, and I'm talking about what I do outside of work, and they're like, "Oh, really? Yeah, you got a startup idea?" They take me like some joke or whatever, and then I just like lay it out there, and I'm like, "This is what I'm doing. This is the amount of money I'm seeking. This is why." And they're like, "Oh, wow, that's actually a good idea. Wow." And they get like serious. So it's it's interesting. I never really I just try to just plow through that first impression, especially if you're not being taken seriously. It's like, pay attention or else I'll leave you behind. But second challenge in this article is the challenge of cynicism. Article says that in parts of Africa, you meet lots of unbelief when you introduce yourself as an entrepreneur, and they say you are very young, or they see you as being very young or even too young. So there's this idea of being too young to be trusted with business in parts of Africa. I think we see that less here, again, but that's how we are.
I think we see that less in America because who are the billionaires today?
Mm-hmm.
Who are the millionaires today? I mean, if you look at Twitter, Foursquare, Facebook.
Youngest billionaire, yeah.
Yeah, youngest billionaire. You see these high-tech startup companies, and you see these, generally technology, but you see these companies starting up with very wealthy people, and they're all very young, comparative to the rest of the entrepreneurial class. They're very young, and in many cases, they haven't gone to business school, which we'll get to later.
Totally.
So
yeah, well, here starts a list of how to be respected and successful as a young entrepreneur. So following these challenges, the 2 challenges he listed, number 1, which you were just talking about, is embracing technology. Nothing has contributed to the high number of successful young entrepreneurs in our world today more than technology and the internet, and that's why I value the internet so much. 2 decades ago, or even less when it was more difficult to start a business, the financial requirements and barriers were too high. So technology is taking care of a lot of that. Media businesses such as TechCrunch no longer take much money to start, and you could start a serious business today with a couple $1,000s and no warehouse costs and inventories. So if you're an internet service, obviously you're not going to have an inventory like a clothing company would. And I think that is one reason it might be easier to start that. But number 2 is use other people's experience. So where you're too young or you don't have, you're not, a serial veteran entrepreneur, rely on some people who are willing to work with you and have that. So you build up this great team and it's not, the show's not just about you, but it's also about the people you're working with. So you have this close network of folks willing to work with you, offer equity in some cases. You don't need to pay to get their experience, is what this article is saying. So yeah. Number 3 is be bold and creative. I'm a big fan of being bold, and just do your homework and be confident all the way through. The article says this, and I don't know if I believe it, but if boldness gets you into trouble, only more boldness will get you out.
Success will get you out of it. I think would be a different way of saying that. I've met some pretty bold people in business, and the more bold they are, the less I like them.
Mm-hmm.
I think. I mean, I've seen that in colleagues when we're encountering people. It's one thing to be bold, but you have to back it up with something. You can't just be, throw caution to the wind and run
Mm-hmm.
with it. You have to be able to back it up at some point, or people kind of lose interest.
Furthermore, they're saying surround yourself with a sound board of advisors if you can. These are going to be hard people to get, but if you can, grab them. To network. Obviously, connections are great. Push for and embrace positive change. And we're seeing that as a trend in social impact. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So it's a longer article if you want to read it, but there's a lot of good stuff in there.
Yep.
So.
And next up is an article I really liked because I'm a big fan of Educate Thyself.
Right.
Tell me about it.
It's called Getting Ahead Without Getting an MBA. Now, this presents both sides to the argument. We're not saying don't go to school. We're not saying we're anti-school.
Yeah.
But there are options out there if the formal MBA program is not your deal, but you want the MBA experience. The pros of an MBA, according to the article, are working closely with successful and brilliant people from across the globe, exceptional professional networking and internship opportunities, and learning proven strategies and cutting-edge insights in the field. Above and beyond those, there's a lot of career options, many with attractive six-figure salaries. The downside to this, of course, is it'll cost you some money in tuition, upwards sometimes of $125,000. Loss of salary for the 1 or 2 years of enrollment if you just go full-time doing that. Mm-hmm. And there's no guarantee of increased pay or job satisfaction coming out of the program. I don't think job satisfaction can be promised in an MBA program anyway. I mean, that's not...
Sometimes you think to yourself, gosh, if I only had an advanced degree, I could not only command more salary at my job, but more respect. I could get a better position at the company. But I've heard many times the point you just touched on, where you go to business school for 1 or 2 years. You're not only giving up the money you could have made at your job over those 1 or 2 years, but you're also giving up the work experience and being in the field for that 1 to 2 years where after your 1 to 2 years and you get your MBA and you come back to a company, if you just stayed at that company for that time, you might just find yourself back at the same position had you just stayed there.
Right. Well, they're saying to educate yourself, to look at the faculty list for the top MBA programs and read their blogs, read their postings, read whatever they put out there publicly that you can access, to explore alternative education options such as Allison, ALISON. It's a free online university that offers various diploma programs, including business management and entrepreneurship, operations management, human resources, business development, marketing, and more and more. Read business blogs, magazines, books, all sorts of content and publications in your field. To intern, of course, to get that first-hand experience, to go in at a low level or a high level or whatever it is, but entry level, get your experience. Again, to network, to seek opportunities to interact with others from outside your normal social circle. Join clubs, go to events, network with the people you want to be working with. To find a mentor, this is huge. I didn't used to value mentors, and now I do greatly. I used to think that I had all the answers, quickly realizing, no, definitely not. But a mentor can be absolutely invaluable. I've got a few, some for business, some for life, some for whatever, and real good people. To be disciplined as well is also advocated in this article. I think that's obvious. If you're going to be serious about something, you got to be disciplined. And to apply your knowledge. Explore work opportunities with like NGOs, community centers, social programs, and stuff like that. See where you can, test out your stuff and go for a test flight.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks who They go back to school to learn a specific skill.
Right. I see that a lot at Mason too.
Yep, you're coming back. IT is a great idea, a great place where a lot of people come back and are trying to learn a very specific skill that they can then take back out into the professional and apply to whatever it is that they were already doing. Something very interesting that you've probably been seeing a lot in the news lately is something called Code Academy. And it essentially kind of turns coding into a game of itself, learning to computer program, to code into a game itself.
I've signed up. They've pushed out, I think, 2 lessons so far.
So has Michael Bloomberg, the mayor of New York City, is in Code Academy. But Code Academy has been hitting the news a lot lately just because it's an alternative for people, especially young people, who have gotten into the job market and they see that whatever they're doing, if they only knew how to code, and coding could be anything from coding a website, which is you just basic plain vanilla HTML,
markup,
to Java, to CSS, to much more complex languages like C, C++, Cocoa. A lot of those iPhone apps are programmed in a version of C called Objective-C, and it uses a special kind of language that's more centered on Apple called Cocoa. Learning to do that where you can make apps in your free time or for your job, make apps for your department is becoming a big thing. So Code Academy, I should sign up. But
Definitely do it. Yeah, get caught up. Next up, again, touching on mentors. It's the article's titled "Mentors: A Young Entrepreneur's Secret Weapon," and I'm learning again the incredible value of mentors. So grab one early that you can also trust. I mean, don't just take all advice without thinking about it. Process it yourself. But mentors are definitely invaluable. I don't see the point in learning from your own mistakes, yes, but if you can avoid those mistakes through learning about other people who have gone down the same path and can avoid things for you, I think you're working way smarter. You'll get there faster with less bruises. And yeah, so the article's saying you need a good idea. Startup cash can make a real difference. Business experience and savvy also help, of course, but to take advantage of the most powerful weapon an entrepreneur can have, find a mentor. A good mentor helps you think through a business idea, suggests ways to help generate that startup capital, and provides the experience and savvy you're missing. You'll get praise when you deserve it and heads up when trouble comes, probably long before you would have noticed yourself. So it's an external set of eyes, because often, and I'm guilty of this, I'll get so drilled into something that I'm not too aware of the surrounding environment. And, you could drill it down a path that's endless and useless, and it won't be good for your business so far that you just wasted a ton of time. So they'll help you kind of steer back onto the correct path, so you don't waste a lot of time.
We've talked about this recently with one of your business startups on dealing with the news. I won't get into what exactly it is and give away your secret.
It's a news site.
It's a news site, but
we'll say that.
Yeah, you were drilling down very directly, and you and you've had this discussion with other people about how to actually bring it to fruition and make it where it's appealable.
Right. At first, though, I was just kind of developing it in secret and just kind of what I thought would be a big hit. But talking to other people, finding out how it would potentially help them in their situation, I've kind of got a different view. And that helped me quite a bit, because if I had spent a couple months developing it as per what I thought would be good, then I released something that probably doesn't hit home with a lot of people. So hoping in the next couple months I'll have a more popular project. But yeah, this in the article, the guy is talking about his grandfather, who was his mentor. He was owned a memorabilia and antique shop in Vancouver and was a natural entrepreneur. And sometimes you don't have mentors in the family, but they can definitely be helpful. So don't overlook your own family circle. There are 8 tips to getting the right mentor in this article. 1 is determining your needs. 2 is take time to network to find a lot of people. Listen more and talk less. This is really important because you're there to learn. The mentor will want to learn a little bit about your situation and everything else, but just listen. Be all ears, definitely, and record everything. Take it to heart. 4 is be memorable. If you come off as I'll explain what this says. But if you come off as someone who knows everything, and this gets back to listening, many people will back away. They'll think that you got it, you're not coachable, you don't need any help. So yeah, go for it, kid. That sort of thing. I've seen that happen where they're like, all right, Mr. Smarty, you don't need my help, obviously, so go for it. Um, and then you'll flop or come back to them with your tail between your legs and be like, hey, I need a little help. Number 5 is remain flexible. 6 is don't overlook non-traditional mentors. 7 is thank your mentors, of course. They're spending their time on you, often without reimbursement or anything. And 8 is pay it forward. So, you'll never be able to pay your mentors back, but help other people out.
Fantastic.
Definitely.
Indeed. So, moving along, there is a kind of stumble across a really great entrepreneurship program that's sponsored by Highland Capital Partners out in California in Menlo Park. HCP has started a program about 5 years ago called Summer at Highland, which is an entrepreneurship program designed to provide university-affiliated startups with the environment and resources for taking their initiative to the next level. The program is founder-friendly, which is important. As we discussed in a previous episode about a lot of folks won't help your business without taking a stake in your business. Highland doesn't want a stake. They receive no equity in exchange for your participating in this contest. You're under no obligation to talk to them after the program, but they wanted to start a program to help entrepreneurs. Selected teams will receive $15,000, a free office in their Cambridge or Menlo Park office area, and really the opportunity to work closely with the Highland team and their network of founders. You'll also have access to some of their Highland Summer at Highland speaker series folks, which include CEOs from companies such as Airbnb, Google, Kayak, Amazon, AngelList, Dropbox. They're looking for people who already have a leadership team with a vision, passion, and a drive. So you already have to have a company rolling. Your initiative is built around something that is kind of a breakthrough idea and that's scalable. You're pursuing a large, addressable marketing opportunity with a product or service that really has the potential to be highly disruptive in the area. You have to be able to show that your business has momentum, and most importantly, your startup has to be technology-based or technology-focused, which is very interesting.
Mm-hmm. They list software as a service, internet, digital
Yeah.
media, e-commerce, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Now the application deadlines are March 1st, 2012.
For the early one, right?
Yes, by the 11:59 p.m. The program is open to teams with co-founders. That's an important fact. You must have at least 2 co-founders,
Oh, wow.
but no more than 4
Okay.
for your company, and that you must be a current undergraduate or graduate students, postgraduate students, or if you're a recent grad, you must not have graduated earlier than December 2011. So at least one participating team member of this leadership team has to either be in school or graduated no earlier than December 11th. So also you must be United States citizens, or you have to have the paperwork in place where that won't cause any problems. But check out their program. The website's hcp.com, which stands for highlandcapitalpartners.com/summer, for more details. And I think Garrett is
I'm applying.
Yeah, of course you will.
I'm going for it. Early deadline is March 1st, and I'm going to apply for early. Regular is April 5th. Not April 1st, but April 5th.
I knew the moment I saw this, I said, Garrett's going to do this.
And thank you for discovering this. This is definitely something I'm going to follow up with. Awesome. Well, next on the news is an article titled "Young Execs Bring Conscious to Work," and we're seeing this trend where new hires, when they just graduate, they're looking for positions at companies that have a lot of social impact. And I didn't think that was a big thing, and I still don't feel that in my field, or maybe just with my circle of people that I most commonly talk to, that it's that big of a sort of factor in their hiring decision. A lot of my friends are like, well, I'm just looking for a good position after graduating, and a good position is their ability to repay some loans right off the bat. So there's got to be, some salary figure that's pretty decent to not only live, but to start paying back, some subsidized loans. And I just didn't see social impact coming in, as a top thing. And I think that yeah, it's just probably in a different friend circle that this is sort of happening. But a rising number of executives in their 20s and 30s are moving into management jobs, and they bring with them a social conscience, an inclination to give back, where they're seeing this volunteer army at University of Canterbury is doing this. The article says that as they scale the corporate ladder, these talented decision makers and the CEOs of tomorrow are interviewing potential employers just as much as they are being interviewed themselves, and they want to find out if their values and the firms are aligned. And the article says that the emerging generation is more idealistic than their parents, and money is not their priority, and that's applauded in this article. So.
Yeah, you see, and they talk about different companies that try to push that out in their recruiting methods, and when they actually hire someone, they let them know up front, yeah, don't worry, this is our corporate social responsibility policy, and this is how we envision that every day in our company. So it's not only is it something that the employee is looking for, but employers are recognizing this and offering it to their potential employees to entice them to come in.
Definitely, and in some cases we've heard that that's a deal breaker, where that takes so much of a precedence over money that if there is no existing social impact program, or there's not even the capacity to build one, people will opt to not hire on with that company. Mm-hmm. I want to see some evidence on this before I start to believe it myself, but maybe it's happening. So I think that wraps it up, and we just started a YouTube channel at youtube.com/moneymajorsPodcast, and that's where we're going to be distributing episodes simultaneously with the iTunes Store like we've always been doing, but we found that some of our listeners did not like the iTunes interface for whatever reason. So we're also going to be publishing a still image with audio background, maybe some article information in that image, but we'll have our episodes on YouTube as well as iTunes. So everyone with these Google tablets and everything can access YouTube, I believe, and we're good.
Same thing with the iPad, but also we'll be working on other little projects of ways of bringing the content directly to you. So we'll be hosting it through the website. Eventually, at some point, videos on the website. We'll also use the YouTube channel when we interview people. You can upload the video from there. You can check out Garrett's wonderful CES video on our YouTube channel, Money Majors Podcast on YouTube. But yeah, that wraps it up. So as always, love us, hate us, got some suggestions, got some comments, want to recommend news articles to us, recommend startups, your own startup, for goodness sakes, please. We love it. Drop us a line, podcast@moneymajors.net. Send us a tweet over Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @moneymajors. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/moneymajors. And again, that website is moneymajors.net. Thank you all very much for listening, and have a great day.
Money, 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 all I ever hear these days. Every song that the DJ plays, talking of a similar situation. Ain't got none and got to get some. Gotta have more than I had before. Gotta have more than the man next door. Every day I gotta make some more, some more, some more. Well, give me a break, yeah. Or let me take some time out. Gotta frisk my mind out.